Hello, friends and neighbors. Thank you for joining me again today, or perhaps for your first time, for the poem of the day. This will post on Wednesday, August 20th, 2025. Although, as I mentioned yesterday, I'm recording the night before. So, as I'm recording this is Tuesday the 19th. And I'm doing so that I can shorten my morning routine before going in to teach classes. Today was the first day of class that we had our students back, and I'm abundantly overjoyed and very tired. We had all classes meet today for shortened periods, and going from not being in the school year to the inertia of being in the school year can be tiring, right? Your energy is sort of zapped. But I was reminded again just what a wonderful job and vocation I have, that I get to sit with young people and provide them with literature and work with them through complex thoughts that require them to engage with themselves and with their role in society. And actually, today we did Diving into the Wreck by Adrienne Rich as sort of a metaphor for self-identity and discovery through confronting things that you've heard about but have not confronted yourself yet. And they did an absolutely wonderful job with it. I was very impressed, and so I think it was very promising for our engagement with texts in the remainder of the year. But for us today, we're continuing with our week on Emily Dickinson. And the poem that we'll read today is poem number 260. This is a 2-stanza poem, 2 stanzas, 4 lines per stanza. And as opposed to yesterday, it doesn't focus as much on nature and science and faith or religion, although there is a nature simile in the second stanza here that's important to the poem. But this one, I think, is more about society and more about isolation and one's relationship with society and how one thinks of themselves as an individual. So this is poem number 260, published in 1861 by Emily Dickinson. I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell. They'd advertise, you know. How dreary to be somebody. How public, like a frog, to tell one's name the livelong June to an admiring bog. All right. This poem, I think, where I often like to begin with where poems seem to be deceptive, where they seem to be cute and simple and then reveal something deeper. And I think often Emily Dickinson's poems can be kind of glanced over because of their meter. In this case, alternating iambic trimeters and iambic tetrameters, which gives a sort of galloping quality to her poems. You can hear it in like, are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell, they're advertised, you know. Obviously, that's not the way to read it, but you can hear it as you're reading through and as you're enunciating the words, that the meter is one that's kind of consistent and has a heroic, upbeat quality to it. And then her having that 2.5 line simile in the second stanza of a frog extending to the end of it, it feels almost like a punchline or a mic drop thing, that this poem feels almost like a joke. And I think there's a satirical element to it, certainly in the second part, but I think rather than being funny, it is more kind of bitingly critical. Something else that strikes me with this poem is that within the first line, within the first 2 words of the first line, there's again immediately a caesura with an exclamation point. I'm nobody is the declaration there. And that's something that people might say kind of colloquially, right? Like, who are you? Oh, I'm nobody. And could be a false sense of humility. It could be a true sense of humility. just within this moment, I'm thinking of the film Nobody, where people ask, who is this guy that he can do all this action and all this skillful killing? And he says at some point, "Oh, I'm nobody." I think of the Odyssey, when the Cyclops is blinded by Odysseus, and he says, "Who has attacked me?" And Odysseus is like, "My name is Nobody." And yet, then the second part of the first line, we're addressed directly as readers. Who are you? And so what I think Dickinson's talking about here is, she was rather reclusive during her life, and so few of her poems were published during her lifetime, that she's talking about, being, again, somebody who's withdrawn and somebody who's socially reclusive, but also somebody who, as a writer, is not known and revered at this time. And so ending it in an exclamation point makes it not a lament of, "Oh, I'm nobody. No one cares about me. No one's ever going to know me." It's sort of a proud declaration of anonymity. And then she asks, "Who are you? Are you nobody too?" And there's obviously no answer there. There's no answer that we could give back to her. We can't speak back to the poem except for in our reading and our engagement. But she's assuming that we are also nobodies too. It'd be interesting to read this thinking of yourself as a somebody. And do you kind of drop off the poem at that point? But as she shifts these pronouns from you then to us, she's inviting us into an association with her, which I think is really important with the imperative in the fourth line, "Don't tell, they'd advertise, right?" Which would then kind of blow our cover and blow our anonymity. They may not know us, they may not include us, but we are together then. And there's an interesting kind of paradox of introducing oneself as nobody, because then in introducing yourself, you're becoming a subject, you're becoming a somebody to somebody. Second stanza, "How dreary to be a somebody," which is a nice reversal of the expected "how dreary to be a nobody." And she finds it dreary for two reasons. One is that it's public. So she would be the person who probably turned down a lot of social invitations. But how public, like a frog to tell one's name, the livelong June to an admiring bog. And I think she's viewing people who are more well-known and more popular and more liked as being somewhat sycophantic and self-serving, hubristic and self-promoting. That, what do you really gain out of spending time around your admirers and preaching yourself and your accomplishments and your wonderful positive qualities to people who already admire you? And to think of, a frog telling its name to an admiring bog, I just kind of think of these frogs kind of croaking back and forth at one another, almost like this echo chamber of, people who serve almost as an entourage that are constantly just following you around and praising you and glorifying you for how good you are and how wonderful you are. A series of yes men. And she's obviously not writing about social media because it wasn't invented for another 140 years, but I can't help but think about that as well. And the need that a lot of us have to go on and see likes and see comments, to hear the admiring bog echoing back that "I see you, I acknowledge you, you are somebody, and you're somebody that I approve of." I can't imagine that Emily Dickinson would be one for social media. I think she'd have a lot of disdain for that and for the people who are influencers. So I think this is a fun little poem, especially because now she very much isn't a nobody. She's one of the most famous poets in the American tradition and possibly within the English language. But this poem, I think, has a lot of strength to it and a lot of staying power because it appeals to this innate desire that a lot of us have to transform feelings of despair and loneliness and anonymity into something that you can claim for yourself and be proud of. And whether you chose it or not, sort of believe that it's better than the alternative. And I think that's where it gets a lot of its influence and power. I wish you all a great rest of the day, and I wish you peace.